So, hey everybody, and thanks for tuning in for another In Conversation With episode. If you're joining us on Friday night on the Azurish Live Twitch.tv channel, then thanks so much for tuning in. Please do take part in the chat below. Don't forget to give the channel a follow, and you'll get notified next time we go live. Equally, if you're watching this over on Catch Up on YouTube, thanks for joining us. But please don't forget to give us a like and obviously hit that subscribe button if you can. It really is appreciated. Okay, so my next guest, he's a security technologist and an entrepreneur. He's based in San Diego, California. He's a blogger, a vlogger, and a TikToker. And he's massively active across the community in the cloud and security space, always there to offer his insights and his support to others in the community. In fact, he was one of the first people I got talking to in the community when I started on my own sort of journey a few months back. So on that note, with that being said, I'd like to welcome my next guest on In Conversation With is Mr. Alex Ortiz. So, hey Alex, thanks so much for joining me. How are you doing?
Pretty good. Thank you for having me on.
No, not at all. It's a pleasure. I think it's a long time overdue. It's probably fair to say, Alex. I think like I alluded to, I think we started speaking probably pushing a year ago now, I guess, over on Twitter. How's things with you?
Pretty good. I've been freelancing. I actually quit my job 2 months ago. So this week is my 9th week of being unemployed. And so I've just been experimenting, trying a bunch of different things, learning a lot, and kind of just trying to figure how to put food on the table.
And do you know what? I noticed that you've done that. And before we get into all that good stuff now, I'll let you give yourself a little bit of a better introduction than I've given you. And it was one of those reasons I did notice that a few weeks back that's where you were going. So we're going to get into some of that goodness, I'm sure, in a minute. But I think it's probably fair to say we've got quite a plethora of topics to cover off today. But I think we're going to maybe focus a little bit on the cybersecurity side of things. But I mean, before we get started, Alex, do you want to give yourself a proper introduction? Let our viewers know who you are, what you're up to, what you've been doing.
Okay. Yeah. So my name's Alex Ortiz. I'm based here out of San Diego. I was born and raised in Orange County, California, really close to Disneyland. So if anybody's ever been to the area, I grew up maybe 2 miles away. Lived there for 25 years, and I've been working in the defense industry for about 10 years. But because of my time there, my master's was paid for by my employer. And so as part of my contract, I actually had to move where the work went. And so I ended up moving to St. Louis, Missouri for 31 months, grew a lot there, basically became an adult. And then I had a clearance for the government here in the United States. And so because of my clearance, Boeing, the company I used to work for, lost a major $50 billion contract. And the competitor that actually won, they set up shop across the street at a bar and basically just started handing out job opportunities to anybody and everybody that wanted to take them.
Wow.
So that got me back to California. They gave me the option between LA or San Diego. San Diego, if you're from that Orange County, LA area, San Diego is usually the vacation spot. It's a 2-hour drive. It's beautiful. And most people come this way just to have fun. And so I was given another opportunity at life here in California. So I took, you know what, why don't I just go where everybody goes to vacation? And so I set up shop here in San Diego and been living here since 2016.
You can't do that to me, Alex. I literally just told you what the weather is like here. I like to joke with people that I live in sunny South Wales, and it's anything but sunny at the moment. So no, I mean, it sounds fantastic, to be honest. You're living the dream out in California then at the moment. Sounds like it, Alex.
Yeah, it's very expensive, but it's beautiful. It's year-long weather. It's amazing. I remember being in the Midwest and being able to, you have to check the weather before you plan any activities. And here, it's just the traffic's the worst thing that can happen to you.
Oh, well, I guess so, yeah. At the end of the day, it's not a bad problem to have, though, if you've got the year-round weather, eh? Right, where shall we start? Where shall we start? Because I think, well, certainly from my point of view, Alex, over the last year or so, I've seen you involved in so many fantastic sort of entrepreneur things that you're looking at. You've got APE Tech Data, I think I've seen, where you're doing some great stuff around Scratch. You've obviously got the cybersecurity arm. I mean, where do you want to start with anything? Pick the topic and we'll start off there.
So I'd like to go into how I got into TikTok, but maybe explain the journey and the trials and tribulations that I've gone through over my career and
Yeah.
how I
Okay.
ended up coming to the decision of ultimately quitting my job. I think that'd be a good place to then springboard to everything else that I'm doing.
Yeah. Let's go for it. So, I mean,
Yep.
how did that come? Because I've seen you over the last what 2, 3, 4
Years.
months maybe.
Yeah.
You've delved straight into TikTok now. So you've got some fantastic TikToks. And it's great to see that platform growing. And it's certainly one that I've seen a lot of other people in the tech community start to hook into a little bit more. And so yeah, take us through that, Alex.
Right.
How did that begin, and where are you going?
All right. So with TikTok, it's been one of those platforms where a lot of people usually still have a negative connotation towards. TikTok started off, it's actually a pretty old platform, right? It's been around for a couple years, but it was primarily for 8-year-olds to 12-year-olds, right? It was this platform where these young, really young kids were just sharing funny videos with each other. And then when the
Mm,
pandemic hit, all of a sudden everybody jumped on the platform, and the algorithm for TikTok is just magnificent, right? It's the one platform where you can go from not having an audience at all and all of a sudden overnight have 1 million followers, right?
mm,
And you cannot see that level of growth on any other platform, right? I've been trying to grow on YouTube, on Twitter, and on Instagram for years, right? And it is the barrier to entry and the barrier to get that kind of viral ability, if that's a
yeah,
word,
yeah,
right? To become
yeah.
viral, it is
It is
so
now.
challenging. Yeah, making it up here. So yeah, it's super challenging. But TikTok, the way that they promote videos, right, and the way that they just allow you to grow as a creator has been super powerful. And I've missed a lot of opportunities. I've missed opportunities to grow with YouTube. I remember being in 2006 in high school, and my friends were like, "Hey, have you ever checked out YouTube?" And I'm like, "What? I don't know what YouTube is."
Yeah.
Right? The internet was still so young, and missed that opportunity. And then with Instagram, missed that opportunity. And with Twitter, even though I have a Twitter account since like 2008 or nine, way
Mm,
back in the early days of Twitter, just missed those opportunities of like rapid growth. So I did not want to miss another opportunity. And so I decided to roll up my sleeves and go all in on TikTok.
mm,
And the results have been really good. I experimented quite a bit. I initially started by just drawing and just kind of putting leadership quotes. And that did
mhm.
not do very well. I was probably averaging about 20 views, and it was mainly my family.
Yeah.
Being Hispanic, I have a very large family, and I kind of forced everybody to like my videos in the early days. and
Yeah, I'm
then
with you.
and then I had a shift. Um, uh, this was like around January of 2021. I was starting to have uh, kind of an existential crisis with where I wanted to be in my career and what I was accomplishing there and where I wanted to go in my life. And so I pivoted and I started doing some documentation and just kind of just showing my life, right?
Mhm.
Showing my day to day and just telling my part of the story. I'm a big follower of an influencer we have here in New York, Gary Vaynerchuk. I don't know if
Okay.
you've ever heard of him. He's not in the tech world, although he's jumping massively into what's called non-fungible tokens, and we can talk about that later if you want to.
Okay.
But
Yeah.
he's going all in into this concept of NFT, so he's constantly sharing his journey, right? So he was there when email started, right? So he's one of
Mhm.
the very first. He created one of the very first online wine stores uh,
Okay.
in the world. And then he was there when social media started coming around. And so he's built a multi-million-dollar business centered around doing marketing for businesses, Fortune
Mhm.
500 companies, but strictly social media, right? No commercials, no radio, no television, all online. And so he's been
Okay.
pioneering these big shifts and technological movements. And when he started saying jump on TikTok or Twitter, sorry, jump onto TikTok, I had to listen this time, right? And I jumped in. So his biggest advice was people want to hear a story, right? People don't really care about the end results of stuff. They cared about the journey, they care about the process, and they care to
Mm.
learn and be part of your growth, right? And how they can relate to that. So I started a couple of videos, just a minute long, right? With TikTok, you're limited to just 60 seconds at most. And just started sharing, right? It was boring stuff, nothing of interest. I was 3D printing things out. And so I share a little bit about that. I share about the books that I've been reading. And then about halfway through January, coming into February of this year, I then again wanted to pivot, right? I started following more people on TikTok, and they're like, hey, you need to just start experimenting. You need to see what takes off. You just need to try different things, because the platform, if you ever go to TikTok's website where they like onboard you to how to use the tool, they actually encourage experimentation, right? So they have a ton of built-in filters and audios, and just it really is a platform where you can get creative with your content. So at that point, that's when I decided, you know what, I'm going to focus on cybersecurity and kind of just start teaching people about cybersecurity, because everybody gets hacked all around the world every day, right? There's like a hack happening right now somewhere in the world. And there's just not enough people talking about it. And I've been fortunate enough to be trained professionally in cybersecurity. And I just wanted, like you're kind of doing with your community, right? I just wanted to start giving back to the community. So I started doing videos on cybersecurity, just talking about passwords and common things that most folks run into. It did well. I grew a couple hundred followers. And then one day I stumbled yet upon another video that said, I'm going to guarantee you 1,000 followers in a week if you do this strategy. So I recorded 21 videos up front. Right. And it doesn't take very long, because TikTok is also great for video editing. The capabilities and the tools built into your phone make for very quick, low effort video. So you're not having to pull an entire production studio like most YouTubers do, right? Because if you want a successful YouTube video, you almost need a Hollywood set in your office nowadays, right? But with TikTok, it's very mobile friendly, and it's just as simple as pull out your phone, hit record, and 15 to 60 seconds later, you're done, right? And you can edit and fine tune things here or there, but within 10 minutes, I can hash out 10 videos, right? So the barrier to like enter and the barrier to create is significantly less, which really helped me out, because when you're doing a bigger production, like for a YouTube channel and stuff like that, you really need to sit down, get a script going, kind of figure out your camera angles, figure out there's a lot of logistics just to record, and then not to mention the whole post-production part, right? And so with TikTok, all of those technological barriers kind of just go away, right? It's very friendly for anybody that just wants to put their message out into the world, and they really foster that.
I mean, it's really intriguing to listen to what you're saying here, to be honest, Alex, because you're so right. I mean, in terms of, I mean, even doing these videos, you know, for people like myself that we might do a few YouTube videos once in a while, it is, you know, a significant amount of effort to put into these videos. Not only the time it takes to do the video, but like you say, the post, if there's any editing that needs doing or overlays, and then uploading that video, because typically they're quite large file sizes. You've got to click, upload it, put it on the platform of your choice. So there is a whole process that you have to go through. But I guess, is it that in terms of the platform for what you're trying to do? So what is it that you're trying to do, Alex, in terms of, you know, give that little bit of knowledge back to the community in terms of cybersecurity? Is a great niche to kind of hook into. I mean, can we have a look at your TikTok? Can we jump on over it?
It'd probably make a little bit more sense to kind of walk you through. I'll scroll down to where I left off here. So I started off then. I sat down, recorded 21 videos. And then just basically, you can save these videos in what's called your drafts. So you don't actually have to publish them. You can edit them and you can finalize them, but you can just hit save and then deploy at a later time. And so I basically just came in right around this time here. You can start seeing where I went from an average of, so TikTok kind of, the more videos you have, and then when you do go viral with the video, your audience tends to then go back and kind of look at the rest of your videos, so they inflate your videos. So right around this time, I was averaging 200 to 300 views per video, and I'm publishing 3 videos a day for 7 days straight. And so I did that, and I grew 2-3 people or new followers a day. And as you can see, it's basically I focused on passwords, right? So passwords and credentials are the gateway in cybersecurity for elevated privilege, right? And most common folks, so the target demographic that I'm trying to focus on is not IT professionals, and it's not people in the industry that already know all this stuff, right? I've been really trying to gear my videos towards like my parents, right? People that are stewards of the internet, right? They go on the internet to communicate with their friends and family. They shop, do some shopping, some online banking, right? But they're not aware of the dangers, right? They're not aware of the scams and all of the different bad things that hackers are doing to trick them into coughing up their password, or basically trying to impersonate them, or do like identity theft and all those things, right? So I
Yeah.
felt like, since I have that background and I have this ability to explain these technical terms in more layman terms, that I wanted to focus on that. I wanted to focus on helping everybody out there that may not have the education or the privilege, or be in the roles that are like IT or technically savvy, but they're still using technology every day, right? And so I started with, like, a lot of people write down their passwords, right? This is a common thing. You sign up for an account. First thing you do is reach out for a sticky and you write down your password to that website. You put it in your drawer. If I come into your place of business or your house, guess where's the first place I'm going to go look for passwords, right? It's just common behaviors that hackers take advantage of when they're doing the social engineering. And so I just wanted to, again, share the dangers of that stuff, right? So at least you're aware that maybe it's not a good idea to write your password down.
Yeah. No, absolutely.
And so, yeah, so I started with that. And then my last video, I'm going to show it to you here, 92,000 follower or views, right? So the numbers you see on the left, or bottom left, are the actual views. And so on a Sunday, after having, this is my 96th video also on TikTok, right?
Okay. Yeah.
Roughly 96. And I went to Costco. We went to go get our groceries for the week. And when I came home, and as I'm taking everything out of the car, my phone's just vibrating like crazy. And it's notification after notification after notification. And my wife, upset at this point because I'm not helping bring down these heavy things from the car. She's like, "What is going on?" I go, "Something happened while we were at Costco, because all of a sudden my notifications on my phone kept saying 99 plus, 99 plus."
Right.
And I would clear them and it was like 99 plus. And this video, where all I do is I highlight, I'll see if I can open it up and lower the volume. I literally just highlight 5 cybersecurity certifications, very much like the Azure certifications that you can get. I just highlight them, right? I'm just calling them out, and it's within the
yeah. That wasn't you then, I take it. No, that wasn't you as Luigi.
That was my son. My son loves Luigi, and he likes to play Luigi's Mansion and dress up as Luigi and go catch ghosts. But
Cool.
what I was trying to say here was, as long as you have this sweet 7 to 15 second video with a trending audio, right, a trending sound, TikTok will promote it exponentially, right? And so within a matter of hours, I went from having 100 followers to 900 followers.
Wow. Okay.
And so from there, it just motivated me. This video right here, and just being able to see that this was possible, because I've been trying to grow on Twitter for years, right? And I've been trying to grow on YouTube for well over a year and a half, and putting videos, right, investing hours into editing and creating, and trying to teach these, which we'll talk about later, right? Trying to teach kids how to program. It's a lot of effort, and it took me 10 seconds to make this video. And all of a sudden, I just saw this exponential growth, right? And so this really motivated me to kind of decide, right around this time, we can see the date here of March 13th. And I actually turned in my 2 weeks notice probably that week to quit my job. Because if it wasn't for that success that I saw that day, I would have never mustered up the courage to take that leap of faith into going 100% and being a content creator and going to, and just to help the community.
No, absolutely. And I suppose the obvious question here is, you said that you're effectively unemployed. You've gone off on your own. You've taken that leap of faith. You've got to put food on the table. At the end of the day, I completely get what you were saying, about things like you miss the boat with certain technology. I think as technologists and techie people, I think we all look back at the trends and how things have happened over time and think, I was around then and I wasn't doing that. Why wasn't I doing that? And you kind of kick yourself. So I mean, it's quite an admirable thing what you're doing now, Alex. I think it's cool. I think it really is cool, and it's certainly something that I've told to a lot of people. Obviously, I've got a young son. I've got 2 young daughters as well, but my son in particular came to me. He said, "Dad, I want to do streaming. I want to do this thing with social media." And I guess a lot of parents, my parents certainly would have gone, oh, what do almost poo-poo it and brush it under the carpet and say, why do you want to be doing that? But social media, I think, as you alluded to earlier on, has got such a huge basis for making that living. And I guess, is that why you're doing this, Alex? Is that one of the reasons? And where are you going with that kind of entrepreneurship thing that you got going on?
So the very first reason is, again, it's to evangelize the message of cybersecurity, right? I've spent since 2014 within the STEM world, right? So sidestepping from the cybersecurity, I'm really big into engineering, the science, technology, engineering, and math. And I think you've seen some of my posts there in that space, right? And so when I was at Boeing in St. Louis, I was invited to go to a local college to basically demonstrate or have a booth for the company that I represented, Boeing, at the time, right? And so we had a booth, and there was a bunch of kids that came in from the high school level, and they were kind of just looking it was like an engineering day, right? And so a bunch of different companies came over, and they were just trying to encourage students to uptake a career in engineering and see what options are available, right? Because and again, not to deviate too much, but I'm a first generation college. I'm first generation in my entire family to graduate from high school, go to college, first one to get a master's, and I'm really the only person in my family with a career, right? And so I never had anybody in my life to help guide me, because I'm also the oldest, and I'm an only child, right? So I never had that support growing up. And I accidentally stumbled into engineering, and I accidentally stumbled into technology, right? If it wasn't for the fact that my major computer for my bachelor's, that it had the word computer in it, I wouldn't have become an engineer, right? Like I literally just picked the major because it said computers, and I like computers, right? And that was the only thing that I based my future off of. And so I want to change that, right? There's so many living in Orange County and LA, there's a lot of underrepresented minorities here, where my wife also, right, her job was to graduate from high school and go into the family business, which if you're a minority in these areas here, you're going into landscaping, you're going into construction, and you're just helping your parents with their day-to-day responsibilities, right? And so I want, part of my message is to help raise that awareness and show to students and to kids all around the world that, hey, there's like meaningful careers you can make out of here, right? And with my TikTok, that is so true, because I go live Monday through Friday for at least an hour, right? And I'm just answering questions, and repeatedly the people that come back to ask questions every day are these high school level kids, or freshman, sophomore, first, second year of college students. That they're interested in cybersecurity, but they don't know if they're going down the right path. They don't know what shortcuts there are in life. They don't know if they're doing it right. And so many of my conversations that I'm having, not in the videos, but through live, just through the messages that show up on the live stream, right? It's, am I doing the right thing? I'm doing this major. How would I go about getting an internship? How do I get this experience at the beginning, right? So I can see that at least the people that are watching are still my target demographic of confused individuals that know that they want to do something better in their life. And through my TikTok and through my YouTube, I'm able to kind of help people out, right? And provide the mentorship that I wish I had.
And I remember back when we first started chatting on Twitter, that's what you were working quite heavily in with, was your YouTube channel and that content about putting that. I mean, can we have a quick look at that, Alex, in terms of what you were doing in terms of your YouTube and the Scratch tutorials? I think just to pick you up on no, go on. Say.
No. I said we just went up another subscriber since I just hit refresh.
Oh, there we go. See, it's the power of recording a video about it. See, now I was going to say it's a really admirable thing. Again, I just loved hearing what you just mentioned there, Alex, in terms of you being kind of one of the people in your family that you kind of pushed through, against all odds, and you just kept going, and now you're looking to pull some of this content back and allow others to consume that and help. And to pick you up on the point you made there about college students or maybe younger kids coming through, if they're questioning and they're confused, I think it's probably safe to say that there are a lot of confused adults as well in the tech space at the moment, because because of the fast pace of change that is going on, and it's cool to see how you're using things like YouTube and now TikTok to get those messages across as different ways. It's really cool to see. So yeah, I mean, yeah, jump in. Tell us a little bit about
So let me give
APE
you a
Tech
little.
and.
Yeah, let me give you a little backstory of why we started this channel, because my wife and I do it together, and I kind of left off of that story with Boeing being in
Oh,
St.
one
Louis.
one second, Alex. 1 second.
So before I get into why I started the channel, let me finish the story with the Boeing, right, and being at that college and that event. So we have a booth, and we're the Boeing company, right, 100-year-old company, billions of dollars in revenue, and we had paper airplanes that we were showing and balsa wood planes. And I I just thought to myself, I'm like, how am I going to inspire kids to become engineers with a balsa plane and a paper airplane, right? And so I
Yeah.
was fortunate enough that the college at the time was only like 3 or 4 miles from my house. So I drove home and I picked up my 3D printer because I had actually built my own 3D printer. It didn't work. It was still boxed up because I had just moved to St. Louis. But I just grabbed the box, put it in my car, drove to the college, and then just put the printer on the table, and every kid came over to just see it. And I was fortunate I
Yeah.
had some samples from when it did work. And then I was just showing them and talking about them. And I got so much interest that after the event was over, the coordinator for Boeing, the representative that coordinates all of the STEM education across K through 12, which is kindergarten through 12th grade here in the United States, which is ages 5 through 18, right? She's responsible for managing all the education outreach that Boeing does in the St. Louis region, the St. Louis
Mm-hmm.
metro. And she calls me. She goes, "Did you bring a 3D printer to this event?" And I thought I was in trouble because I didn't ask for permission. I just went home and grabbed the printer to have something interesting to
Yeah.
to show. And I like just very scared said, "Yeah, that was me." And
Yeah.
she goes, "Do you think you can bring it again? I have another event this weekend." And so from
Cool.
there,
Yeah.
she really leapfrogged my interest and curiosity into how to help students out, right? And so through Boeing, I did a bunch of curriculums and we developed programs to encourage kids to become engineers. When I came back to California, I lost that network. And so in trying to look for it, I was fortunate enough that I still talked to all of my all my teachers from grade school, right? And now those teachers had actually moved up the ladder at my district where I grew up, right? And again, underrepresented communities where 90% of the students, if they graduate from high school, that is a major accomplishment, right? And
Sure.
nothing else is expected of them to go
Mm-hmm.
beyond the high school level. And so I went and reached out. I was meeting with the superintendent of the district. I was meeting with principals of all the local elementaries and junior highs and high schools that I went to. And I was telling them, like, look at this thing that I built at Boeing and the impact that we had on the community. And immediately the responses were, it's not part of the curriculum. It's not part of the standards. We don't have time, and it's not something that we want to do. So I
Mm.
told my wife, there's got to be a better way to reach these kids, because if I can't go to the schools and motivate them and influence them, right? Because a teacher that a student has can't inspire them to become engineers when that teacher is not an engineer, right?
Yeah.
It is
Yeah.
so challenging to
Absolutely.
speak with passion and the love that I have for the technology, right? Like the way you talk about the cloud and everything within the Azure world. Imagine if you were not in this space, right? And trying to
Mm-hmm.
motivate somebody to jump into it. It's almost impossible. So for a kid to become motivated, I feel it has to come from somebody that does it, right? And
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
that's why
I'm with you. Yeah.
we started this channel, because if I couldn't get into the schools, then I was just going to create my own school online and have the kids
Good
come
deal.
and learn here. And so interestingly enough, in the United States, our viewership is probably less than 40%, with the majority of our audience being from third world countries, with students in Latin America and in India and in China
Mm-hmm.
wanting to learn how to program, right? Or wanting to learn the technology so that they can improve their chances of life. And
Mm-hmm.
so that's where we started it. So we've have about 74 videos here. It initially started with my wife when we were in college. She did videos for Verilog, which is a programming language that embedded engineers here in, that you learn for like FPGAs, which is like more low level, similar to like Raspberry Pi technology,
Yeah.
right? So
Sure.
it's on that level. And so we already had that channel. We already had a couple hundred followers. So we decided to just piggyback off of that audience. And then we started building Scratch tutorials. And so yeah,
Nice.
so we
Yeah.
just go deep into Scratch, and we've had a couple videos that have gotten at least 10,000 views here. But yeah, the biggest part has been, again, just kind of having a place where we can teach and inspire, because over my last 6, 7 years that I've been doing this evangelism for STEM and trying to encourage kids to become engineers or think about technology in general, by the time they get to their senior year, they've already kind of made up their mind on what they do or don't want in life. And Scratch is a great tool to introduce at the 4-year-old, 5-year-old range, where their minds are still like so moldable, right? And so they can be influenced greatly. And not enough effort, at least here in the United States, is being done to encourage kids to become engineers, right? We have this thing called an hour of code, which like every school across the nation will spend 1 hour out of the entire school year teaching kids how to code, and
Oh
it's just not
wow.
enough,
Yeah.
right? Especially
Yeah.
when you don't have the right
I
motivations.
agree. I think we did speak briefly about this, I think, a few months back, didn't we, Alex? I think in
Yeah,
terms of, yeah, you over in the US and what I do in the UK, I'm involved with a program called Barefoot Computing in the UK, which is it's not a YouTube thing, but it's about helping teachers, I guess, helping teachers introduce computer science type vocabulary into everyday syllabus, so everyday lessons. So, and show how teachers can actually transform their lesson plans into, that logical thinking and that programmatical thinking, and basically to teach kids how to be problem solvers, which is, but the bottom line, what coding, and then it does introduce things like Scratch programs and Scratch things, which is why it caught my eye when we were speaking all that time ago. So I thought, oh, that's awesome to see that, you've gone off your back and you've created a lot of these tutorial videos. And in fact, when I saw it, I think it was one of those things I thought, what I'm going to do is I'm going to approach Barefoot in the UK to say, look, there is somebody doing this in the US. They put together, it's almost one of those things for even for personal development for teachers. I would happily point them at this channel and say, well, there we go and have a look at some of these videos and take from it what you will, and introduce it into your own classes. But it's great to see, Alex. It really is. And I love, like you say, I love the passion that you've got. It resonates hugely with me and my own beliefs about STEM in the UK as well, because I don't think the US and the UK are too dissimilar in that sense with educating the young in terms of computing. And there's certainly things that could be done a lot better in the UK. Things are getting better, but there's still a lot that we could be doing. And it's cool to see that you're doing this over in the US, Alex.
Yeah. So I can talk a little bit about the plans here, right? Going forward.
Yeah.
Quitting my job was the YouTube strategy was a key component of quitting my job, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because as we were talking about, how do you put bread on the table? The whole strategy is going to come together here over the next few months. And I try to do this being full-time employed, and it's just, there's not enough time, right? Because what I'm planning on doing with Scratch is taking the computer science, AP computer science curriculum that the United States has, right? And it is based on Scratch already to a certain degree, right? But then creating resources, because the bigger problem that I saw was there's two sides to the coin. Is one is the students wanting to learn, but the second is that the instructors themselves don't know coding or programming or cloud or anything, right? So I kind of almost want to create two separate types of videos where I go deep into if you're a student, this is the walkthrough on how the concepts or how to learn the concepts you're trying to learn. And then if you're an instructor, here's the behind the scenes, right? Like, this is why this stuff is important. So I'm trying to create that, and I've been working with a friend of mine who's been in the industry doing similar stuff, but first person to person, and we're trying to figure out how to incorporate that into my YouTube channel. So that's going to be a big component going forward, where the majority of my videos, the next 100 or so videos, are going to be more based on those standards, so that instructors around the nation or around the world can at least have that more credibility and have that direct application back to what they're supposed to teach, right? Because these videos right now, they're great, but they teach you the concepts, but they don't really tie back to what you have to teach. So my purpose is to do that, right?
Align it to the syllabus, I guess,
Yeah,
is what you're saying. Yeah,
yes,
just so,
exactly.
with you.
Now with the TikTok strategy, right? That's the eyeballs, right? Because of the growth that TikTok can have. I'm just one video away from going from 3,000 followers that I have on TikTok to going to 30,000, right?
Sure.
It's very possible to do within the next couple of weeks. And so as I'm pivoting and as I'm making my adjustments, I do plan on bringing cybersecurity tutorials to this APE Tech. So we intentionally named it APE Tech Tutorials, programming tutorials. I'm probably just going to do tech tutorials, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's the tech part of APE Tech, with
Yeah.
APE standing for Ameliorite Paragon Engineering. So
Okay.
it's actually an acronym, right? So we wanted to make better and the perfect engineering tech tutorials. And so, yeah, so I'm planning on going deep into YouTube and creating more in-depth Scratch-based tutorials, in-depth cybersecurity tutorials for adults and for students,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then jumping into the cloud. So moving over to Azure, AWS, and GCP are big passions of mine. And we can, once we're done here, we can probably start shifting into the professional part of my career.
Yeah. No. Cool.
But yeah, so I do want to plan. I plan on creating a ton of videos for this space with how to get into cloud, how to like do it from an IT perspective, how to do it from a developer perspective, and the different careers that are enabled when you know this stuff, right? And then I'm also doing technical writing here because communication is such a key component that as technical people, we're usually taught that just know your skills, right? Know how to do the technical aspect of your job, but it's not very helpful if it's just up here. And if you
Mm.
can't articulate the words, and if you can't communicate your thought process on paper or in a written form, right? It's challenging, right, to share your message. So part of my thing that I'm doing here is, again, I wouldn't have been able to. I would be able to do it working full time, but the process would have been nights and weekends.
Yeah.
And I just
Yeah.
wanted to accelerate this because when I hit the 1,000 subscribers on YouTube, as you know, then that ad money comes in, the affiliates come in. TikTok, once you hit 10,000 followers, they start paying you as well,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so that's kind of the key to how I'm going to put bread on the table is by doing all of this upfront work, it's going to start generating massive amounts of passive income for me.
Yeah. And it's cool to see because, I mean, for somebody like me, it's making money from YouTube is definitely not on the horizon, or certainly not at the forefront of my mind. It's purely an outlet, but I guess it's always there. You see these these world famous YouTubers and potentially. I mean, I don't know of any TikTokers just yet. I certainly know of a lot of people on TikTok that have got a substantial number of followers now from doing similar kind of escapades that you're doing at the moment, Alex, and building that audience. But I mean, it really is cool to see that actually, does your job need to be this 9 to 5 thing? Can't you use your experiences and your skills that you've got, like you're doing, to educate other people?
Mhm.
And actually, is that not a modern day kind of new job using these social platforms? And I think, one of the things that you mentioned about sort of revenue streams, I'm seeing a lot of this. A lot of friends of mine are doing very similar things where, they're looking to have multiple jobs. And certainly I've seen news articles around work, the workers of the futures, the millennials coming through now going into work, because they're I don't know what the term is. I'm by no means an expert, but because I guess they're used to this fast pace of change with technology and move from this to this, and they kind of expect to have multiple jobs, multiple part-time jobs. And I mean, is that how you're seeing things at the minute, Alex? And is that where you're going with your own kind of career?
Yeah, no, that was one of the major drivers because as I sit down and kind of evaluate on average, so I'm looking at a lot of data, right? I'm looking at what other successful people are doing,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm seeing their numbers at a minimum with a decent 2 to 3,000 follower subscriber here on YouTube. You could very easily be averaging $150 a day, which
Mm,
not much, but then on TikTok, for every million views, you're getting $15 from TikTok, right?
right.
And I also have a podcast on cybersecurity, which we haven't talked about, but
We'll
I have
get
a
to that
pretty,
now. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
we'll get to that. I'll pull it up. But yeah, I have an in-depth podcast on cybersecurity where, again, as I do promotions there, and I just had my first guest on my podcast last week, right? So as I do those things, and it'll show them, I mean, um, it's all kind of part of it, right? So if I can get a couple
Mm-hmm.
thousand followers on TikTok or make $50 on TikTok a day through these videos, a couple $100 on YouTube, couple $100 on the podcast, and I'm not sure why it's taking forever to load, but and then I wrote a book on technical program management, which is the last thing I was working on before I quit my job. right? I was basically a glorified project manager. And so I
Okay.
wrote a
Yeah.
book on my techniques and strategy there. I got courses that I'm developing, right? Both from a paid perspective and from a YouTube perspective.
Hmm.
And then I'm doing the freelancing. And so this is where I think we started talking, right? In freelancing right now, I'm doing technical project management, and
Hmm.
specifically I'm doing Jira configurations. Jira is a tool for project management
Yeah.
that is pretty well known here. And I'm an expert at it. I've been using it for 5 years from an administrator and from an end user perspective. And
Hmm.
I've driven a couple multi-million-dollar projects to completion using this tool. So now I'm going back, and as I quit my job and I'm like, okay, I need to start making money now.
Yeah.
I've
Yeah.
been able to get a couple $1,000s a month just in just doing 10-hour worth of work to companies that need
Yeah.
these services, right? And my next step, as I'm trying to evaluate, okay, so there's only the niche for Jira is so tiny, right?
Hmm.
I'm going to exhaust people needing help with Jira, right? And so um, the next pivot, I started looking at a gentleman by the name of Adam Elmore, and he's actually gotten all the AWS certifications, right? There's 11 of them that you can get, 12 when he was going through this journey, and he's averaging 60, 70,000 US dollars freelancing,
Hmm.
doing setting up AWS and doing the configurations for AWS for small businesses and startups.
Hmm.
So that got me thinking, what's my next step, right? Where I ultimately want my wife and I to both be doing this business together, right? And so she's right now still working. She's a software engineer at a defense company, and basically she's carrying the insurance here in the United States. Your insurance is directly tied to your employer. So you don't have an
Right.
employer, you don't have insurance.
Right.
And I
With
have
you.
two
Yeah.
little ones, right? So it's a problem, right? It's a big burden to carry when you're an entrepreneur, you're unemployed, is
Mm.
where if something were to happen, that can wipe out your entire savings account overnight, right? Like
Yeah.
here,
Yeah. With
a
you.
trip to the hospital is at least $10,000-15,000
Wow.
for
Yeah.
one night.
Yeah. I
and
mean,
and
that's
so
yeah. Obviously, you're speaking to somebody that lives in the UK, and we have the NHS, and it's a case of we pay through our taxes and national insurance is what they call it in the UK, and it's not a fraction of, I guess, what the insurances of the US cost. So yeah,
Mhm.
it's really strange times, I guess. Strange to be in these kind of different positions, isn't it?
Yeah, but yeah, so going back to that though, but that insurance has been the single most here in the US has been what's held me back the most, right? Not
Yeah.
if my kids, they're super active. I have two active boys, right? If they go and break a bone, my entire
Mm.
savings, my entire runway can be eliminated overnight. And so that's why
Mm.
I waited so long to quit my job. And people thought I did it too prematurely, right? They thought, well, you should at least have money coming in.
Mm.
But I decided it was a perfect timing. I had just done my performance review, as all the bonuses had gone out,
Yeah.
and when I quit, at least 8 or 9 other people also quit, right? So I kind of just went in a
Mm.
bandwagon because it was just the right timing. And then I said, you know what? If I don't do this, I'm never going to do this, and I'm just
Mm.
going to be sitting on these goals. So
I mean, look, whenever you're making this kind of move in your life, there is always an element of risk in everything, isn't there? And I think certainly one of the things I've learned in life is that, good things happen to those that take the risks or are prepared to
right,
take the risks. So,
yeah,
I mean, good on you, to be honest, Alex. I'm pretty sure you're going to make a success of it all, but
thanks.
it's cool to see how you're going now. But yeah, carry on.
Yeah.
Carry on.
Well, so the next pivot then is going to be once I'm kind of exhausted the whole Jira stuff, I want to conquer cloud, right? I want to go specifically into Azure and to AWS because those are the two biggest ones here that most
Hmm.
companies are using in the US. And I want to go deep, right? I've carried this imposter syndrome most of my career where I felt like I was never good at anything, right? And so my strategy behind this whole thing is I will not get good at anything if I don't really dedicate myself to it and
Yeah,
kind of
yeah.
just actively roll up my sleeves and do the work. But at the same time, I don't want to keep all that information in my head. I want to share everything
Hmm.
because through teaching, it's going to help reinforce everything back into my mind anyways, right?
Yeah, sure
So
thing. Yeah, absolutely.
it's a double whammy where I'll gain critical skills that are going to be needed in the next generation of technology, right? Because every company is moving over to the cloud.
Hmm.
Jira, even just talking about Jira, they used to offer an on-premise server version and a cloud version, and they killed the on-premise. They
Yeah.
only offer data center, but your company at that point needs to be at a data center level, which is basically kills 90% of the companies in the US, right?
Yeah.
Because not
Yeah.
a lot of people have the infrastructure to stand up an entire data center, or you have
Yeah.
to go to the cloud, which then that 90% is going to go over to the cloud. But even defense companies, where the world that I came from, on premise is something you have to do, right? And we can transition over to defense world if you want to now. But
Well,
I worked in
yeah. I mean, I was going to ask Alex. I mean, in terms of all of this, and it's cool to see that your planning is very much going into the world where I sit at the moment, into the cloud world, and learning about the cloud technologies and understanding. Yeah, I think for quite a while now, certainly I was one of those people that could see cloud, see the software, software as a service offerings for years and years, actively partook in them, and then even with the likes of AWS and Azure kind of gaining momentum over the last, decade, I'd be quite happily be sat on the sidelines going, yeah, I'm seeing all of this happen, but it's only really the last few years where I've actually thought, like you mentioned earlier, you kind of need to be involved in that, and if you're not, then you might miss out, and that's what's driven me to kind of do what you're talking about to a certain extent. Is I need to jump in feet first. I need to learn all of this new content, and certainly to do the job that I'm doing, let alone anything else. So, I mean, it's cool to see that from your perspective as a cybersecurity person, to all intents and purposes, working in the defense space, you're seeing it from that side of the tech world as well. So, I mean, how is that impacting the cyber world from your perspective at the moment, Alex? So this rise of the cloud, then.
Right. All right. So, most defense companies, my experience, 10 years of my experience has been in the defense world, right? I started at Boeing working on military aircraft for Air Force. And then I transitioned over to naval aircraft. And then when I came to Northrop Grumman back in San Diego, I was in the unmanned space for Army and Navy and Air Force as well, right? And so I've always been on this very restricted type of work where, because of the sensitivity of the data, right, you're building these aircrafts that have immense search and rescue capabilities. They have immense destruction capabilities, right? They have immense reconnaissance capabilities, right? They help map out the strategies for our military usage, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you want to keep that stuff under wraps. You don't want just anybody listening to it. So you can imagine that the world of cybersecurity is super critical.
Mm-hmm.
But there's been a shift. There's been a huge shift that is really unfolding right now as we speak. And that is all the data that all these aircrafts, like all the engineering work, right? All the planning, all the code, everything that makes up this multi-billion-dollar aircraft is all hosted on premise, right? And so these companies have to go and get the talent to protect their on-premise servers and all of their infrastructure, right? All their data, everything is in a building in some location somewhere around the US, right? And there's restrictions, right? There's because of these contracts and the sensitivity of them, non-US folks cannot touch this stuff, right?
Right.
So right away, the cloud is like out the window because you can't take advantage of the offerings of the cloud because you don't know who's managing on the other side of the fence, right?
Okay.
And so these government contractors, Lockheed, Northrop, Boeing, Raytheon, they all have to do everything on premise. But there's been a huge problem, right? Lockheed Martin, the U.S. has one of the most advanced fighter jets. It's the F-22 Raptor, right? This plane is undetectable by radar. Do you know that an F-22 has entered your airspace when all your buddies are parachuting out of their jets because it's already taken them out, right? You cannot see this plane. The Chinese have hacked into Lockheed's servers and stole all the things, and they've made their Y-22, which is a copycat of the F-22, right? And so these defense contractors...
So, Alex, sorry to chip in here, but I am marginally aware that this is going on a YouTube channel. So I'm with all of these words that are going to go into an algorithm. I'm joking. I'm expecting a knock on the door now. But no, carry on. Yeah.
This is part of the story, right? So all of these things are happening, and it's public information that these hacks have happened, right? The shift now, the government saying like, whoa, hold up, guys, we can't be having these hacks happen so much, right? And
Mhm.
so there's these new initiatives called the CMMC, which I'm blanking on the term for right now. But the
Okay.
government, up until today, has basically put the onus of cybersecurity onto the defense contractor to protect the data.
Right.
But the
Yeah.
government's saying it's been on the honor system of the defense contractor saying, yeah, we're protecting your stuff, don't worry. But the government's at this point saying no more, right? We need proof that you're actually doing everything possible to protect the data. And a shift to the cloud is part of that major strategy,
Right.
right? So these defense contractors are having, well, specifically the cloud providers, right? So your Azure and your AW, your Amazons, your Microsoft and Amazons and Googles are having to create what's called the FedRAMP, right? These
Mhm.
federal, there's these specialized versions of their cloud infrastructure that are probably that are isolated from the typical cloud, but they're
Yeah.
still managed and maintained by the same folks or by
Sure.
the same
Yeah.
group, right? But they're more restricted, right? So the access is U.S. only, right? Your
Hmm.
the data that's going on there is for government use only, right? So the cloud manufacturers are having to shift also, right? And they're
Hmm.
having to stand up these much more rigid cloud infrastructures that are gonna be abiding or enabling the government and their defense contractors to switch over. But
Hmm.
because of the hacks that are happening, right? Specifically, just less than a month ago, the entire southeast part of the United States lost gasoline, right? There
Right.
was no
Yeah.
gasoline. The Colonial Pipeline, it was a victim of a ransomware attack, right?
Mm.
And the reason these things happen is because the individual contractors are having to pay for the defenses, right? They're having to pay for cybersecurity professionals, white hat hackers, if you will, to
Hmm.
protect the assets. But they're not doing a good job. We're failing that war. And so
Hmm.
what the government right now is pushing for here in the US is to let's get all this stuff off of on-premise and let's move everything to the cloud now that our cloud partners are creating these safer environments. So all
Yeah.
of these contractors are having these initiatives to really explore the cloud at a deeper level that hasn't been done before because before it was a big no-no, right? You could not put this information on the cloud because the second you lost the traceability of where your data is at and how it's being used, you basically violate the contracts that you have with the government,
Yeah.
right?
I mean, yeah, I've seen certainly over the years, I've been party to certain conversations with the company I work for in the UK, specifically along those public sector defense type, sort of secret type projects where I think some of it comes down to misunderstanding as well of the capabilities of the platform by the individuals involved for a specific project. And some things come down to silly things like, I mean, typically we've all seen those services, I'll pick on Azure now where, that the data is going to be stored in a specific region, but because maybe it's a relatively new or it's in a preview feature within Azure, things like the metadata, the naming of that service is only stored in a data center in the US. So all of a sudden now, because certain elements of that data are stored in the data center, but the actual data isn't, it's a no-no. People just put up the barriers. So I mean, it's probably been a long time coming, these kinds of government working with the tech companies, and I guess, to be honest, you could go quite deep into this because there's a lot of I suppose, what's the term, there's a lot of morality that comes into it then, and obviously the cultures that the governments are talking to the tech companies about handling everyday data, so there's certain things and principles that come into play then, I guess, as well. So it's quite an interesting journey that's happening at the moment. But yeah, I mean, so where are we in the US now then in terms of what's going on in that sense, where you mentioned lots of the defense contracts now,
Yeah.
they're actually being looked at to use cloud first almost.
Yeah, so the first thing that we have is right after the Colonial Pipeline hack from less than a month ago, our president, Joe Biden, he issued an executive order basically outlining like a 12-month plan of how he's going to he's cybersecurity needs to become a priority for anybody doing any business with the government, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that entire executive order, which is a really long one, is outlining like the way the different things are going to happen, right? In
Okay.
addition, in order to gain new work, right? So if I, as under my brand APE Tech, if I have every ability to go and bid on contracts, right? The big players don't always necessarily have to get the contracts. There's enough work to go around that smaller companies can also get some of that work, right? But now, in order for me to do that, I need to prove to the government and have accreditation, right? So they're actually building an army of assessors that are going to be going to basically anybody dealing with the government and storing any kind of data, and they will have to go through a very 5-level journey of proving that, hey, this is how we're protecting the data at every stage, right? And it's all kinds of data, and the more important the data, the more rigid it's going to be. Now, all is to say, though, none of this considers like classified stuff, right? So that stuff is handled on a whole separate world. I won't even talk about that, because that's the stuff where people are going to be knocking on your door, right? So this is all for like public-based information, where you still have certain aircrafts and certain products that the government works on are publicly known, right? The more classified stuff, that stuff's already under lock and key. And one of my worries, though, of moving to that these defense companies are going to start utilizing the cloud is Amazon's security and Microsoft security. I've been into their buildings, right? I've been into their facilities, and you don't necessarily have the same level of appreciation or the same level of paranoia that defense contractors usually have, right? Because what I can imagine 5, 10, 15 years from now is hackers understanding that all this data is centrally located in key parts of the country now, because you moved everything to a data center. And how do you take out those data centers, right? Like, how do you break into those? So right now it's so dispersed, right? All these defense contractors are all over 50 states, and all of a sudden you're going to move them to very key strategic locations. And so I'm interested to see, because it just takes one admin password to gain root to a server to cause all kinds of catastrophic problems for people, right? So they think from a cloud perspective.
Sorry, Alex. I mean, to add a bit of a 2 pence from my perspective as well, is that what I've seen, my observations with security over the last, let's say 5 or 6 years, with the kind of the rise that we're experiencing right now as well in cloud technologies, is that security has infiltrated everybody's life in terms of tech professionals. So I'm an IT operations kind of person. I'm almost expected to take on the security role in some instances, where traditionally it was always a separate specialist team of knowledge. And I've questioned this for in my own head for a number of years, is that we all know that the reason why security is such a prevalent thing, and we have to stay on top of it. Not, if it's just for a small company down the road, right the way through to those government contracts. Security is a huge thing. And I think the proliferation of the security technologies are so well embedded and baked into feature sets and tech within cloud services. It's kind of, you're expected to know that. And look, there's a lot of people that aren't security trained. That there is a lot of people, but now we're dealing with products and services that have got security baked in. Now, how much do we rely on the cloud provider to do their thing and kind of bake these in such an easy, abstracted fashion that security is baked in? And how much should a consultant or an engineer be party to that, and how do we break those roles out now? So that's my 2 pence on that, because it's right, you're saying there with physical security around a data center, now all of a sudden contractors, rather than being spread out, now there potentially is a focal point for somebody to try and attack that data center, I guess. And maybe that's the next physical security has to become, we're looking at guidance systems on physical security, things
right
like that.
Around, you're going to have like a vast perimeter around,
like a big center. Mesh, a dome over it. Yeah, who knows? But it's such a cool, interesting place at the moment, isn't it?
It's going to have to evolve quite a bit, right? And this is going back to the TikTok, right? Of the awareness, right? Of why I'm doing these videos. It's like even in 2021, that we're halfway through this year, the easiest way or the most common way to break into a company is through an employee, right? To exploit the vulnerabilities of a human being is your number one vulnerability in cybersecurity. It has nothing to do with the technology or the physical location of the building. It's your employees and the information that they give up, right? On Facebook, it's really common to get specifically like with my parents, right? They'll get a link from a friend, a trusted person that they know, right? Allegedly. And then it's like, hey, is this you in this picture? And it will have a link. They click on the link and not knowing the link has you sign into Facebook again for some reason, right? And if you're just not aware, you're gonna go, oh, maybe it's signed out. Let me put in my credentials. Except that link is not a real Facebook. It's a site that's designed to steal your credential, right? And now if you're like most folks, you'd be surprised. I done a TikTok, right, on how many people still use the top 100 common passwords in the world. Like password 1234 is still used by like 20 million people. That's
scary,
20 million
isn't it?
people.
Yeah,
too many 20 million people.
No, and it's a really interesting place to be in terms of security. You know, like you say, even with the Microsoft filter on what those guys are up to and what those, you know, those kind of features that are being brought out now. It's just, I think they released only recently an updated cybersecurity roadmap of the product sets that kind of protect Microsoft cloud services. And you look at this it's a PDF document with everything laid out, all the products and feature sets, and wow, it's huge. The amount of different. So, I mean, it's really cool to see. You know, I think when I mean, certainly the security side that I know in IT is this whole terminology of defense in depth. You know, starting off at the physical security and work your way through right up to application, and then, like you say, even down to the person that's, you know, sat at the end of the phone or at the end of the computer. But I think a lot of what we're seeing now is there's a lot of artificial intelligence baked into security products. There's lots of machine learning and clever algorithms that know, you know, and things like conditional access and privileged identity management. So there's lots of these things now. You know, are you seeing any of these things yet in the cybersecurity world, or are they things that have been around for a long time in on-prem form, but they're just now being adopted by the cloud? How do you see that, Alex?
No. So the same stuff is happening on our side, but it's only now just happening, right? Being able to like the intrusion detection systems in the cybersecurity world to detect anomalies, right? Just things that don't quite belong. They're improving, they're getting better. The problem is that I'm still seeing is two parts. Is one, most companies are running all the time, right? Like you're constantly innovating, you're constantly growing, you're constantly scaling. You can only know what's wrong once you take a snapshot of what your baseline was. But it's very possible to take that snapshot or establish that baseline with malware already in it and you just weren't aware of it. So essentially it's almost moot at that point because garbage in, garbage out, right? So I'm seeing that a lot in our space where even if you have these advanced technologies that are able to detect new threats, you might still have existing stuff that that's been dormant and you're just not aware of because you never took proper inventory of your system from the get-go. The other part, separation of duties is so critical, right? But it starts, there's a dichotomy of progress and paranoia, right? And so most people be able to do their work, they need privilege escalation. They need to be able to jump around from system to system, do different things. And so you mitigate that by separating the duties, right? You have somebody that can only do this part, somebody can do this part. But every once in a while, process gets in the way. And so people take shortcuts, right? They'll find the right person that can light speed them up to what they're trying to do. And somebody's always going to have this admin password. And it's those people, right? It's those people that I'm worried about because, again, we're so susceptible as human beings that it's very easy for me to craft. If I'm going to be breaking into a company, I'm going to invest the time and energy to build an attack, a social engineering attack that is going to work on that specific individual. I'm going to know everybody in their family. I'm going to know them by name. I'm going to know where they live. I'm going to know their favorite coffee. I'm going to know every aspect of their personal life to build this personal relationship because the payout is millions and millions of dollars.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. The Colonial Pipeline cost and they actually paid it $74 million for the ransom.
Wow. Yeah.
So it's very lucrative for a hacker to invest that time. And something I want to also talk about comes back to passion, right? A lot of people coming into cloud and cybersecurity, a lot of people, and I'm not saying everybody, right? But this is usually the case for many, is the title of being a cloud practitioner or a cybersecurity practitioner comes with a certain eliteness, right? If it's great, it's you get paid well, right? It's a very lucrative career, right? It's the benefits are great, you're making a lot of money, and it's something that rewards you a lot compared to other professions, right? So a lot of people are jumping into the space for that reason. And again, I'm not saying that it's everybody that's doing it, but too many are doing it for those specific reasons of fame and prestigeness that comes with being in these roles, right? But the hackers, right, the people that are trying to cause problems within the cloud space and within cybersecurity, they're passionate about what they're doing, right? They live, eat, and breathe being able to dominate something, right? To be able to take advantage or exploit something. And you have your professionals that they have to follow rules, they have to follow processes, they have to follow management approvals and the separation of duties. And you just can't react the same way that an attacker has, right? So the technologies and even all the AI stuff, it's all still psychological and stuff, right? Like even with an advanced AI system to detect these anomalies, as long as you still have humans in the loop, you're gonna have a lot of vulnerabilities, right?
Yeah,
Because
absolutely.
these
Yeah.
people that are designed like yourself, right? That are you're paid to protect these systems and to bake these solutions into your architectures and stuff, right? You Some people might not be doing it for the right reasons, and so they might be withholding information from their peers. They might see a problem, but they might be too embarrassed to call out like, hey, there's a problem. They'll try to fix it, right? And
Yeah.
so they're as they're scrambling to try to fix it or cover up a mistake, an attacker can come in and sweep in and take advantage, right?
Mm.
And so as long as that rules kind of exists, it's going to be a chicken and egg problem for a while.
Oh, without a shadow of a doubt, and I think that's probably what I was alluding to earlier when I mentioned around, people like myself are going in and speaking to business now on cloud technologies, and that, it's just the technology just seems to be moving on exponentially fast, which is for the good guys great. For the bad guys, it's probably even
Great.
better,
Yeah.
yeah. So when you think that, you talked about your own cloud journey, your own learning journey, we're all human beings. We're all doing this journey for ourselves, and to try and keep up with the fast pace of change. And if you've got one bad actor, one person, like you say, that is so determined to target an individual or a company, it's such a difficult battle to kind of win, isn't it? I mean, certainly you see some of these major breaches and major hacks over time, ransomware, malware, all sorts of things. It's a difficult situation. So I get, what do we do? Have you got the silver bullet answer? I mean, what do we all need to do?
Yeah, so part of my interview for my podcast that I did last week was with an author who was also my professor in cybersecurity, and his book is called The Smartest Person in the Room. And his premise is we are losing this war on technology because we're missing empathy and we're missing these fundamental human behaviors that are causing us to have conflict with one another, and we lose focus of the greater purpose of why we're here to protect these assets and these systems, right? So his thing is so many people are hiring for people that have the right certifications, right? That have the right skill set, these technically advanced folks. But his argument is that because we're hiring these people that look great on paper, we're actually hurting ourselves even more, because if you're not passionate and you're not in this, this is not what you live for, right? Like this is not what you wake up every morning to do, it's going to be a bad thing. So his recommendation is we need to shift the way we hire folks, right? We need to shift the way we train folks. And the thought process is that we need to start valuing human relations a lot more than technical abilities, right? Because the technical part's only going to get you so far, but being able to quickly work as a team to counteract an attack is much more critical than knowing how to counteract the attack. Because even if you know how to do it, you still need to go through all the paper part or all the human part, right? And get a team together and everybody's like bickering, and then just turns into a yelling match. And then you have the pressure of being under attack. And a lot of the certifications are memorization, right? And so you're learning facts and data, but then when it comes to the real thing where you have an intruder in your system, it's like that heat of the moment, your fight or flight system is going to go flight and not necessarily know how to fight very well. So his recommendation, and I think something that I've been rallying behind, is raising awareness, raising more people. That's why, like, I'm starting at that kindergarten level, right? I'm starting at that 5-year-old level. For the next 20 years, we need to do better at the age of 4 and 5 to prepare these next generation workers to be passionate about what they're learning and not just jump into it because it pays well, right? These kids need to learn it out of the earliest age they can, so that it becomes part of their DNA almost, right? So it's become something that they're really passionate about, so that they can at least be at the same playing field as an attacker. Because an attacker is investing all their time
But
into.
remember that 4 or 5-year-old that you're training now could turn out to be that attacker.
They could, right? So it's a double-edged sword, right? But then again, that's why so much of the technology that I just feel is so underappreciated is like the human psychology part of it, right? Like the environments that you grow up in, right? Your problems with your spouses or problems with your family. While most people tend to ignore it, it does have a significant impact in the technical field, right?
Oh,
And
100%. And I joke, of course, I joke when I say that. But the point, I completely agree with you, Alex. I think that whole ethos of being passionate about what you're there to do is certainly plays a part. And I've seen it myself, certainly with hiring people into the organization where I work. I mean, one of the key things I say is, look, we're not here to hire people based on their skills. We're here to hire people based on who they are as people, because it really is about technical skills can be learned, whether you spend time, your own time digging into something, or you go on a paid for course or whatever it may be. Those technical skills, I really believe they can be learned. It's the empathy, like you say, and the relationship building and the team player mentality. Yep, sure, there's probably coaching courses available for those things, but my belief is that you're kind of one of those people, or you're not,
right.
and learning those skills is not an easy thing to do, is probably my take on it. Yeah.
No, definitely. Like my last job, we were standing up, we were migrating from AWS to GCP, and the lead, no empathy whatsoever, and it's his way or the highway. And it got to the point where everybody quit, right? Everybody on the team left, and now he's got carrying the whole burden. And if he does something wrong, right, he doesn't have anybody else to work with because he can't work well with others.
Yeah.
And so vulnerabilities in the design now are going to be introduced because there was nobody else that could have helped, right? And even if they wanted to help,
Absolutely.
their opinions wouldn't have been valued because they probably get shut down, right? I've been turned away and turned off so many times from offering ideas, but my management with no empathy go, that's a dumb idea. We're never going to do that.
Yeah.
And then from going forward, you never offer up anything else, and it creates a toxic culture.
And do you know what, Alex? I think one of the things that I found when I turned a bit more to the community, to like-minded people like yourself, it's just, not everybody's got the answer to everything. Everybody has got some good ideas and some atrociously bad ideas, no doubt. But just that ability to put it out there and not speak in a derogatory or a negative way towards somebody else's thoughts or feelings is something that I wouldn't say that I didn't value previously, but it's certainly something that I wasn't expecting to see in the community, because I think you can put it out there and you've got this pool of people that would instantly say, brilliant idea, crack on, that sounds great. Or even if it's not a great idea, they would be there to offer that, think about this, think about that. And I think, just to turn it back around to how we met, that 12-month ago on Twitter, to think that we're now having this conversation about empathy and relationship building kind of, shows that actually you can do this, and people should be able to do this across the globe. And just how all of that ties into something as important as cybersecurity, and really being that person being the weakest link, that human being being the weakest link in cybersecurity, and how do you get those people to be more aware? And so seeing what you're doing with TikTok, seeing what you're doing with the YouTube series is all kind of playing into that grassroots level, getting people excited and interested and hooked into what the messages you're trying to say is. To say it frankly, is brilliant to see, Alex. And, I think, the world would be a greater place if more people were like you doing this kind of stuff, because there are lots of people across the community doing this kind of stuff, but it's been a bleeding fantastic conversation, to be honest, Alex. I mean, before we wrap it up, is there anything else you want to touch on now? Because I think we could go on for hours and hours here.
Yeah, I got a 9:30 here my time. No, one last thing I want to mention that you just said right now is, when I first started, I thought my target demographic was IT professionals, right? I thought that whatever I do, even within the cloud world, that I wanted to help further cloud professionals. But the egos in that space, and even within cybersecurity, right? Like if you post the wrong information, you get attacked so much, right? Like there's so many haters on the internet,
Yeah,
and
there are. Yeah,
and it's very
unfortunately. Yeah.
discouraging. So that's kind of why I took a conscious shift to say I might be wrong, and I have no problem owning that I'm wrong about something, and I will gladly post updated information.
Hmm.
But I don't want to be scared to post things that I'm learning, because I'm learning, right? And you're not always going to know it 100% the first time around. And so that's why I kind of shifted to more awareness based than
Mm.
like facts, because with awareness there's at least that ability to like, hey, we're going to be making mistakes, and then but coming into it, you know that there's room for error, versus when I was trying to focus on like creating like true content for cybersecurity professionals, they're like, well, this is wrong and this is wrong, and I'm like, well, thanks guys, how about you help me maybe not be
Yeah,
wrong?
yeah. And do you know what, Alex? I think, I was going to add in at the end there is that maybe I've been fortunate enough. I mean, I've been putting stuff out there. Look, it's not finely polished. There's certainly room for improvement from my own perspective when I reflect on some of the content that I've created. And that comes down to various reasons. But I think I've been fortunate that I haven't been attacked, at any level on social media. And maybe that's the group of people that I've kind of got involved
Right,
with
you
in the
found the right
community.
group.
Well, yeah. And do you know what? I was just going to echo that. And this is partly what inspires me to keep doing these videos, is for people like yourself or other people in the community. It's such a good place to be, in terms of, so when you start doing your cloud learnings and putting that back out, Alex, I'll be picking up on that, no doubt, and sharing that out. But I think you'll find that the cloud community, certainly from my perspective, is probably one of the friendliest communities. Like you, I had those kind of hesitations of, am I going to be kind of shot down in flames? But no, absolutely not. There's such a supportive group of people out there. And I think, just being involved with that group of people kind of helps everybody in lots of different ways. So, I mean, that's going to be awesome to see when you start down that road, Alex. And
Yeah, we'll have to connect again in a few months to see. I have a
yeah,
100-day challenge, so I'm challenging myself over the next 100 days, Memorial Day to Labor Day, to really, really commit to this and try to grow this into something that can flourish.
oh, well, well, obviously we're going to stay in contact anyway with over the next 100 days and beyond. And who knows, if ever I'm out in California, we'll have to meet up. That would be
Yeah,
a
we'll have
nice
to take
thought, eh?
some authentic tacos, man.
Alex, I've really enjoyed this talk. Thanks so much, matey, for coming on
Thank you.
And having a chat with me. It's been really insightful and some great information, great stuff that you're up to. So
Thank you very much for having me.
Not at all, any time, and I wish you all the very the very success that you deserve, and no doubt you'll get there. And it'll be cool to see when you do start turning those corners a few times. I'll be cheering you along. But
Appreciate it.
well, we'll leave it there for now, Alex. Thank you again, and we will catch up on Twitter, no doubt, over the next few
Looking
few
forward
weeks.
to it. All right, thank
Cheers,
you.
Alex. See
Bye.
you soon.
All right.